got two people on the phone here.
I'm ready.
The first one is gonna be July
Give
7th.
Sue about 10 seconds here.
Okay.
We good, Sue?
Roxy, right?
And Moxie.
Yeah.
Hi, Rick, Billy.
I'll reach out.
Hello.
Does this mic work?
Will they turn on?
No.
Yeah, okay. You should give about 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's right, vouchers. Entries or some here, review them, and then we'll pay the vouchers back for it. But I need seniors.
Testing.
They're not on Tuesday.
Is it on?
It's on now. Green light's on?
Just came on. How's that, Billy?
Just give them a couple taps. Let's see.
Testing.
No.
Green light's on.
Just give them a second.
Yep.
Remind me that text you. I need you as my senior liaison.
There we go.
Somebody's on.
Got a green
light.
All right. We got it
I
now.
swear to God.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to call the Town of Montgomery IDA meeting to order for June 9th, 2020. I'm joined by Matt Stoddard, Bob Santo, I'm Jeff Christ. To my right, Randy Green, and Don Berger. Our IDA counsel, Bob McLaughlin. Our executive director, Connor Eckert. And our secretary, Sue Haddon. We have proper social distance. And by phone, we have Ed Williams and John Dixon. So we have full attendance. The first item on the agenda this afternoon is the approval of the May 12th, 2020 meeting minutes. I would ask for any additions, corrections, and then a motion to accept those minutes from board members. Anybody have additions, corrections to those minutes? A motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
By Randy Green, a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
Don Berger, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2020. What's the best way to,
I think because two of the members are not here, we should do a voice vote.
Okay.
A roll call vote.
Matt Stoddard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bob Santo?
Yes.
Randy Green?
Yes.
Don Berger?
Yes.
Ed Williams, if you can hear me, do you approve the minutes?
Yes.
We got a yes from Ed. John Dixon?
Yes.
Yes from John, and I'm a yes, so we have unanimous approval of those minutes. The next item on the agenda is the deviation notice resolution for Matrix Maple LLC. Bob, would you care to bring us up to speed on the aspect of that deviation notice and how it impacts the process of this project?
Sure, so I'll speak to the legal aspect, and then I'll defer to the executive director for the actual nuts and bolts. As we've talked about with the Matrix Maple project, based on what they've requested, it really doesn't fit at all into your current uniform tax exempt policy. What the UTEP states is that if you were to deviate, if the agency is to deviate from that policy, you need to allow for 30 days notice, where practical, to the taxing jurisdictions. What this deviation notice sets forth is what you're proposing to be provided by reason of the pilot in the letter, the draft letter that's attached to the resolution, to allow the taxing jurisdictions the notice that's required by your existing UTEP policy for them to comment on your desire for a deviation from the UTEP. We would set in the letter a public hearing date. Again, it's really a comment period for the taxing jurisdictions. It's not really a public hearing in the sense that the public can comment, it's just for the taxing jurisdictions to either comment or submit written comments. After that, you can then vote on an approving resolution for the matrix or make any changes to that deviation based on the comments that are received. Your UTEP that you're proposing, your deviation is for 25 years. You did receive a comment earlier this week from a citizen that says, that stated in many, he stated many different things, but one of the items that he mentioned was that you can't go for 25 years. That is not correct. You can do it essentially however long you desire, but there are many communities now that are extending their solar UTEP provisions to as long as 25 years, because these are all 25-year projects for the most part. And there has been a concern by some of those jurisdictions, IDAs, many of them, that what happens in the last 10 years? The pilot is gone, the incentive is no longer there. What is going to happen to the solar projects? What is going to be the state of energy needs in 15 years? Will they just walk away? So the extension of the 25 years as an opportunity to not only provide them with a pilot for 25 years, but also to sort of lock them in for the 25-year period, and if they leave, then you can recapture what otherwise would have been paid.
Thank you, Bob. And Connor, would you follow up with general comments and lead into the special meeting?
Absolutely, Jeff. And so the deviation notice will be voted on tonight. And then we'll have that 10-day notice in which tomorrow I will work to get each deviation resolution to the taxing jurisdictions in person. So I'll go to the school district, I'll go to the county, and I'll go to the town hall to deliver these deviation notices, just to ensure that they are properly delivered. People are in the offices and they can in fact see the deviation notice itself. So from there, we plan to hold that public hearing potentially on the 22nd of June, and then the vote on the potential project on the 25th of June, potentially. That's the order of operations we're looking to go.
Any questions from board members before I entertain a motion for each the deviation notice and then the special meeting, Bob?
And just to pick up on the executive director's comments, to the extent that you receive comments from the taxing jurisdictions, they obviously can and should be considered at your approval meeting and can be made part of the final resolution, and any changes or amendments based on those comments that you as a board decide to make can be included in that resolution. So you have an outline of a pilot. You're asking the taxing jurisdictions, the impacted parties, for their comments. If they choose not to comment, that in essence is a comment, but if they provide, hey, we like this or we don't like this part, you can certainly take that into consideration during the approval meeting.
And we're giving them 15 days?
So, because this applicant has expressed a desire, a need to have approvals by the end of the month in order to be able to start the project and be completed before the end of the year, you can't, it's not practical to give 30 days notice as suggested in your current policy. You can do 10 days notice, and that's what we've talked about. Because of the pandemic, because of people are back to work but sort of not back to work at the same time, because it's the end of the school year and school really hasn't, none of the administrators have been really at the school full-time for months. What I suggested to the executive director is that we err on the conservative side and do 10 business days which essentially gives everyone 2 weeks if everything gets delivered tomorrow. So we'll send it out by certified mail return receipt, but we'll also hand deliver it tomorrow. And then they'll essentially have a full 2 weeks to contemplate outreach to the executive director, what their decisions are, and provide comments on the 22nd.
So, Bob, on page 4, when we talk about the 30-day, that it's not practical, you use the word project must commence on or about July 1st. Why must it? Why, I guess
We can certainly change that. That's what the applicant said. You know, we can certainly change that language.
did they give you a reason?
I thought they did at the last meeting. They lose their benefits. I think we'd have to look back at the minutes, but my recollection is that if they don't become operational at year end,
All right.
they lose their benefits at the state level, and it becomes impractical for them to open up the solar facility in 2021.
I agree with you on that.
I think it's a tax credit.
I recall it
I
to
think it's
be.
a tax credit issue.
Okay, I just recall the end of the year that they have to be operational. I don't remember.
They gave a reason. Do you remember?
That's correct. By the end of the year, they do need to be operational, and that also fits in with their project timeline. But I do agree with Bob, as the incentives also do change very drastically.
I think they lose their tax credits on the property if they're not operational.
All right, a couple other things I have here in going through this. Maybe it's because of my lack of understanding, but if you go to page 9 and page 10.
And Don, you're on the deviation notice resolution?
Yeah. Everybody got that? Page 9, item 3. It has here, the project is expected to create approximately 54 construction jobs, in which we all can agree to. But it says, and up to 5 new jobs. They've never said they're gonna create 5 new jobs, but I do understand the words that you are putting in here, up to, that could be 0. So, I'm just wondering, based on their application, they're saying 0.
I thought their application, remember, they actually say 7 part-time for the first year, for the second year. It does kind of go back and forth. What I asked the executive director the other day was that before the approval resolution, we should get clarification in the application and get them to update that and have that done by the end of this week, before the hearing date, before the comment period rather, is that's due on the 22nd, and make sure that that's posted and available, and if necessary, provided to the taxing jurisdictions the updated pages, because there is some confusion. During the May meeting, they did say 5. I find that hard to believe based on my experience with solar projects. They typically don't need 5 unless there's an issue, but
I think, as I recall, Bob, when Mike Dowd was here, giving his presentation, I think he conceded to 0, if I remember correctly.
I'd have to recall the minutes, but in speaking with the applicant, 5 for intermittent maintenance, mowing, if there is an issue. Of course, they'll need these maintenance workers or general kind of independent contractors.
So they're including contractor jobs, not jobs that Matrix would have full-time employees.
So
That's what it implies.
Matrix will have no employees directly employed by Matrix, correct? But there will be independent contractor jobs that will be, the mowing, the maintenance, and any emergency kind of maintenance, or snow plowing, for example, those kind of general maintenance jobs throughout the year.
I'm just curious, Bob, because of both on 3 and 4, my angst with this is the words that are used to describe the 5 jobs. It says up to, which 0 could be up to, and on 4, it says potentially create. So they're not telling us anything there. It could be zero across the board.
So, as we've talked about with this project since at least March, at least my experience has been with solar in New York State. The solar company comes in, develops the project, leases it to another LLC, single purpose entity. And they have that process set up here. That single purpose entity usually has 1 or 2 employees whose job is to monitor this solar location and others in the general area to see if it's working and to solve simple problems, snow removal, ice buildup, in an efficient and timely manner. They then will engage other temporary employees as the case may be, which may be vendors. They also may be part-time employees, which is what's indicated in the original application, okay? That can do other things with respect to the facility. Certainly mowing is one. Occasionally there may need to be some electrical issues, and there also may be some replacement issues as you go down the line.
Is it possible to get better language put into this?
Sure, we can work on that
You know,
over the next page.
You know, because of 3 and 4 are really open-ended. You really, kind of perhaps to identify those jobs. Here it's not identifying anything.
And if I could specify, the 5 jobs are 5 full-time equivalent jobs. So a mix of full-time and part-time jobs equating to 5. But absolutely, I could work with the applicant to get the exact jobs that will be created. But based on the information I have, it's maintenance, it's mowing, snow plowing, emergency kind of maintenance. But I'll get those specifics. Absolutely.
But you can understand where I'm coming from on that, because it's I just would hate to see down the road, once the project's up and running, there's nothing there, nothing's going on, and they say, well.
No, you're correct, Don. Did you have something else?
I have a couple more.
Okay, go ahead.
The numbers on 8, on page 10, they have the amount of private sector investment generated, likely to be generated. How do they come up with that number?
It was in their application.
Yeah, but where did they get it from?
Well, it's based off of their projected costs and how much money they are putting into the project itself. So 9.2
I thought they broke it down in the application,
It did, yes.
based on the land value, based on construction, and based on other improvements.
All right. Thank you, Don. Any other questions? Bob?
I would just add to the member's point, which are well taken, the resolution does say in section 1 that the letter will be in substantially the same form as attached, so we can make minor changes. We should not make material changes. We were changing the pilot between today's meeting and the time the letter went out. That would require further board action, but certainly changes in languages to those sections that you point out and clarifications that can be done over the next 24 hours. And I would suggest maybe circulate it to the members, just so you are aware of what the language is.
And do we have to notice the public hearing in the paper, the newspaper?
So on this deviation notice, this is not a public hearing. It's really a hearing for for their comments. So you do not need to notice that in the newspaper. You just need to send this notice out, certified mail, return receipt requested, and then as well as you're going to hand deliver them. Okay? It's really just to receive their comments on the deviation from the pilot. We've already had a public hearing about the project. But we have another resolution to deal with that as well, so that's
Yeah.
different. This is not, technically, this is not a public hearing. It's really just submit your comments from the taxing jurisdictions because you're deviating from a UTEP that they approved in 2008, which you're in the middle of trying to struggle and redevelop or update.
One more just clarification. This here, pilot deviation notice and resolution is strictly for Matrix and that's it, right?
Absolutely. And as entitled that way.
That's why.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would ask for a motion from the board and a second to approve this deviation notice. Anyone, Bob Santo?
I'll make that motion.
And a second by John Dixon on our landline. Any other discussion on the motion? I'll ask for a roll call vote on that deviation notice. Matt?
Yes.
Matt's a yes. Bob?
Yes.
Yes. Randy?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
John Dixon?
Yes.
Ed Williams? If you can hear us, Ed, you might be on mute. Not hearing from Ed at this point. And I'm a yes. So we have 6 yeses and one
No vote.
no vote. We might have lost him. The motion is carried. Next is a public hearing resolution. Connor, would you like to start us off on that?
Absolutely. So based on the comments we got from a constituent this morning, which were taken into consideration, we have decided to schedule a public meeting proposed for the 22nd of June. And this is essentially to update the public on any developments with the Patriots Maple LLC project and to receive comments that will inform our decision-making processes.
So to amplify on that, it's a close call for the agency. Whether or not a new public hearing is required. The application hasn't changed. The project has not changed. And certainly the benefits have changed, but arguably to the benefit of the taxing jurisdictions. When we received that comment, what I suggested to the executive director is that the public hearing has to be on at least 10 days notice. We have the time. If one member of the public wants to have another public hearing, we should, in my opinion, we should try and accommodate that. There may be others. You certainly should be fully informed of what the public believes or has opinions on about this project. Public hearings can be held during the executive order period, during the state of emergency. We need to provide a mechanism for participants to be able to participate, voice their opinions. That can be done usually through some sort of conference call where there's a gatekeeper that recognizes people register. They are then recognized by the gatekeeper. Mr. Smith, it's your turn. Please express your comments. Mr. Jones, it's your turn. Ms. Ryan, it's your turn. And proceed that way. So we need to make sure we can accommodate that and have that in the notice that goes out.
Any discussion on the public hearing consideration and resolution?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Randy.
say, I definitely think it's necessary to do that. However, we just need to keep in mind that we may not have as much of the technology available, what we were told. So we have to make sure that everybody knows that they should be emailing and work getting out to the public exactly how they can do the conference call, because I don't think it would be used.
So what we can do in the notice, because technology is changing, and I'll work with you on this, Connor, we can reference the website, make sure that it's on the home page of the website, at least as soon as we can, preferably not the day before the public hearing.
And this notice would need to be in the newspaper.
Right now, the public hearing notice needs to be in the newspaper. It also should be posted on the website when we're ready. And I can work over the next 24 hours with you to make sure that gets done. And I think, Sue, there's a daily paper, the general circulation that we can use.
The record, you have one in the local paper, then one in, because it has to be 10 days before your meeting.
It has to be 10 days before the meeting, so.
I would think we'd still put it in the weekly paper, it just wouldn't have the 10 days, as long as we do it, satisfy that requirement in the
Do it
daily
in both,
paper.
but one has to be at least 10 days. Right.
Matt?
You need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
A motion to approve the public hearing resolution has been made by Matt Stoddard. Second to that motion, Randy Green. Any other discussion on the motion? I'll again take a roll call vote. Matt Stoddard?
Aye.
Bob Santo?
Yes.
Randy Green? Tom Berger?
Yes.
John Dixon?
Yes.
Thank you, John. Ed Williams, any chance he got back on?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. And I'm a yes, so we have 7 in favor of the public hearing resolution. Our next item is the corridor study discussion. That this is a new topic, and Connor has done some research on that, our executive director. Connor?
So the corridor study is an opportunity for us to really maximize our development potential, but in a way that's smart, that makes sense, that looks towards the future. So I'll start from the beginning. So as we know, the town of Montgomery has a very strategic location, access to major markets, airport, major roadways. But development must coincide with our community vision, our way of life. This study can easily coincide with what's going on within the town now with comprehensive plan updates, through identifying the highest and best uses of land from an objective standpoint done by Delaware Engineering, a local firm. So through the evaluation of this land in the Route 17K corridor, and that's along Route 17K from I-84 exit 6 to the village, a study can be done, that can report on site development potential, any environmental constraints associated with this land, sectors that could be attracted to the corridor, build-out scenarios, and even the demand for services like water and sewer. Also, it can give advice on aesthetics and design guidelines that keep the roadways, very aesthetically pleasing and can, really coincide with the beauty that we know in the town of Montgomery and keep our gateway, very aesthetically pleasing, very beautiful. So it's really overall a proactive analysis that can serve as a guide for optimal development, the highest and best uses of land. And it's a way to look towards the future to prepare this land and this site for the best type of development possible in a very strategic location.
Thank you, Connor. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John?
Mr. Chairman, John Dixon. At this time, I have to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you for attending, and I realize you have a conflict. Got it, John.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the corridor study? I earlier attended an overview of it with Delaware Engineering. I think it's a good idea for this board to look into, that this is an introduction to the idea. It has a 2-step process, and the first step would initiate it, but my understanding is there's no commitment to the second step. It's a study of it doesn't make sense. Is the community supportive? Are property owners supportive of the idea? It brings in community input before a project user is actually here, and would allow us as an IDA board and as a leadership component in the town to bring in the type of future development that we want to see. And when we hear the public attend public hearings for projects that say they don't want this type of project, that this helps be proactive and guide the projects we do want here ahead of time. So I think from that standpoint, it's very positive, and there's possibly a little lull in development right now when we can coordinate, maybe you said this, Connor, but coordinate with the comprehensive study committee. So I think it's something we should look into more closely.
So what are you asking of the board tonight?
What would you suggest is an appropriate schedule for going through the steps of this evaluation, Connor?
Absolutely. I believe we're asking of the board to familiarize themselves with the corridor study theory, what it can do, its potential benefits to the town of Montgomery, and then essentially sit with that, think of it, and we would have to discuss the mechanisms for providing funding for such a study to upwards of $100,000. But it is a comprehensive study that takes into many modes of analysis into account. And once again, it coincides nicely with the comprehensive plan. So as we're revamping our zoning and our land use controls and mechanisms, we also have the opportunity to examine land for the highest and best use in regards to economic development, which is crucial for moving our town forward, for looking towards the future, for ensuring we have the right kind of companies and development in the town of Montgomery. So I believe sitting with it, kind of understanding it, and then moving forward, we would eventually have to hold a meeting to vote on any funding opportunity.
Would we have a formal proposal? Is there more information that we can read up on prior to the next meeting?
Absolutely, I could forward the actual professional services agreement draft to the board members.
So, help me out with this a little bit. This is in addition to the comprehensive plan committee.
No, it would be separate, but it coincides nicely.
It would be in addition, then, two separate entities coming together. I noticed it's the same planner though.
Mhm.
Aren't they supposed to be doing that very thing on the comprehensive plan committee?
So it is Delaware, and I believe they're doing the infrastructure plan as well. So the comprehensive plan, my understanding, is land use controls, zoning. This is specifically build-out scenarios, highest and best uses of land in regards to economic development. You know, what kind of sectors would want to come here, what sectors can have. So it's more focused on strictly economic development, on site selection, on build-out scenarios, while the comprehensive plan is a broader overview with, of course, citizen input, but revamping our zoning, our land use controls.
I'm all in on that, you know, I think we've talked pretty exclusively on this, and I was just curious because it's Nelson, Pope, and Horace, and that's our comprehensive plan. So I'm trying to gauge how, on the comprehensive plan they're doing a job, and then on this here, how they would be doing a job. I mean, I thought that was part and parcel of what the comprehensive plans committee's job was, to do that very thing. I could be mistaken, I just thought that's what it was. If you're talking about a more comprehensive plan, then that's something different, I think. So, I mean, I'm all in on that. I just want to understand the difference between the two.
Absolutely. So, and my understanding is the comprehensive plan is a more broad overview of the town itself, the zoning, the land use. But this corridor study is a specific study of development potential on that specific area within the town of Montgomery. So it examines these sites, these land parcels, and you know it examines, is there water and sewer? What's the best sector that could go here? What's the build-out scenario? You know, what is the proximity to major markets? It'll do a comparative market analysis, use geographic information systems to really examine the land and the access to certain municipal services and how quickly it can be shovel-ready, which is more so phase 2. But phase 1 is that analysis of just the corridor and specifically focusing on economic development as opposed to the comprehensive plan, looking at the whole town and offering more so zoning land use controls with sprinkles of economic development, but this plan is specific to economic development in a specific place.
There's no doubt that Route 17 corridor's got to be looked into. There's no doubt about that. The other comment I just want to make, I think they believe that's Route 84, not Interstate 17 on the map.
So that's what it's gonna be? It's just 17 corridor?
You're right. Don, if I could just respond and then I'll call on Randy. It's a deeper dive in a certain area of town and even digging down to particular sites that are still available that I think is practical for the comprehensive plan committee to do. And it will take some money, and the IDA has some funds available for this, so I think it should complement nicely and help guide the comprehensive plan committee on this particular area of town.
I think it's a great idea.
And another consideration is, something I like, is it's objective, right? In theory, there are no political considerations. There are outsiders coming in, looking at a site, saying, okay, this is the highest and best use. You know, this is objective. We're outsiders, we're not in the town of Montgomery. We don't have these, you know, we don't have any ulterior motives. We just want to examine the site for the highest and best use. And they come in and say, this is what site selectors look for. This is what they're looking at, and this is how we can maximize the land.
What is the time frame that the Nelson, Pope, and Boris has given to you to complete this? What would that be? Because I guess like part and parcel is that, I mean, Route 17K is being developed right now. And, you know, as probably most people know here, for halting everything and putting all this stuff in order. And that's why I'm really glad to see this, Jim. But be as it may, there are still projects, and there's a lot of vacant land on Route 17K that's gonna be gobbled up here. And how do we, you know, can we, Jeff, go to the town board and suggest or make them aware of this before we move forward on any other type of projects?
Well, I'm completely supportive of making them aware of this and hopefully having their support that it's a good idea as it looks forward in the town on future development.
Okay.
Randy, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I would only say maybe extend it through the village to the end of the other side of town. If we're gonna do it, then do it. Do it all the way through the village.
Out to the end of town on 17K west border.
I mean, if we're gonna do it, there's land there's other things that we may wanna put there as we look, you know, more into expanding on the park or whatever, maybe
Sure.
there's other stuff that can go on the other side of that, so.
We can suggest that.
Absolutely, I could speak with Delaware Engineering and see the feasibility in that.
Matt?
I was gonna say something like what Randy said. I wanted to know exactly where it was going, how far on 17K? From start to end, and why stop? If there's more space and we're doing the study anyway, why not, like Randy said, just keep going?
Bob, is there any issue with us helping to fund this study?
There's only two that I can think of. One is that you're obligated to do some sort of procurement. So if there's a sole source, it makes sense. If Delaware Engineering, big company, is already involved in a portion of the study, and this is an ancillary part to it, you probably can justify a sole source, but that's certainly something that the executive director should consider and recommend. The second thing is that I would prefer that the agency, be named as a recipient somehow of the report. I think it makes abundant sense and is consistent with your statute that you're looking at a study like this to make sure you understand that the projects that may come to you fit within the study. Certainly something that you can pay for, but you should be the recipient of it, so you get the benefit of it. Other recipients can be there as well, but you should be named specifically in the report.
So I would expect we'd have it on our July agenda for further
Absolutely, I
discussion.
can.
Connor?
Yes, sir.
Anything else on the corridor study? Thank you for the input. Local labor policy discussion. Connor, would you lead that off, please? I kind of like to call on you, Connor.
Sorry, Steve. Okay, so from Loki Brill, we received the labor updates on compliance. Stewart Holdings Group is 100% local labor, 100% compliance. Overall, the Sailfish project is 87% local labor compliance. Pasillo is at 92%. Warren County Trucking, 33%. And the total aggregate is 87% compliance with, and that is compliant with our local labor policy. Now, whether to consider Warren County Trucking under the umbrella of Patillo or its own entity will be something that needs to be discussed within the relevant committees for subsequent action.
Bob, is there some way we should refer that question to the audit committee of the board?
So in the local labor policy, any questions of interpretation or exemptions should be reviewed by the audit committee, and then a recommendation made to the board. So if there is an issue with any of the projects, with any of the use of local labor, the appropriate fashion under your policy is to go to the audit committee. And then, with the executive director assistance in arranging that, and then the audit committee should make the recommendation to the board, and then the board should then consider whether or not there's a waiver or an exemption or a modification of the policy in light of a specific vendor and applicant.
Very good. Anything else on the local labor?
I got a little thing.
Don?
Connor, Warren County Trucking. If you recall, when we made the visit out there, they told us that those guys would be eliminated that Friday. They were gonna have their last people working there the Friday of the week that we were there. I think it was actually, to be honest with you, it was a Friday they were leaving, and a final person on Monday. Why are they still on here?
I don't recall the same ending of Warren County Trucking on that Friday. I could double check with the labor monitor, Kevin, and to see their progress as to I believe if you say they should be done, I'll double check with Kevin, like I said, but if anything, they're very close to being done on the site.
I would note that it looks like it's dated as of May 7th, so they may be gone after that. Certainly a question to ask them.
Absolutely. I'll follow up and get back to you.
Just a follow-up.
Anything else on local labor? Moving on to the Sailfish closing update. Connor?
Yes, so we made some progress with Sailfish. $380,000 closing invoice was sent last night, I believe.
Yes.
And that will be wired to the checking account for the IDA, which we then have the option to either keep in the checking account, or I spoke with you, Jeff, to move it into our money market at an 11% interest rate, so to get a little bit. But that's a decision, of course, made within the board.
So from a legal standpoint, I think we're getting closer. It's certainly been frustrating. I think it's not the Sailfish individuals, it's the Amazon/USAA Council that really have approved every agreement form with the exception of the lease agreement. So the way this transaction works, for the benefit of the new members and as a refresher to the existing members, older members, there's what's called an underlying lease. That is a lease from Sailfish to the agency. That puts the agency in the chain of title as a tenant, as a landlord, giving you the right to then provide financial assistance to your tenant. There's then a lease back or a lease agreement to, let's turn it off. A lease agreement back to Sailfish. The terms and provisions of that lease agreement are being negotiated primarily with Amazon and USAA as the beneficiary, ultimate beneficiary of the project. Every other document, and Jeff has those documents for the second time to sign tonight, has been agreed to. The main hang-up with Amazon and USAA has been the access to the site. From my understanding, the best way to describe it is they believe it's their site and no one has the right to venture onto it. We've explained to them, I've explained to them, that that's not the way it works in New York State. The agency has reporting obligations to the ABO. You need to get reports. If you're not getting reports, you have to have the right to go get the reports. So I've conceded to notice before anyone like the executive director shows up. Reasonable notice, only on business days. I think that's all fine. But they wanted to limit it to once a year. They wanted to limit it to not in the fourth quarter. And I've said no to all of that. So I think we're getting close. I there's certainly a willingness and a desire on their part, and certainly on our part, to get this done this month. I think part of the delay has been it's Amazon and USAA, and part of it has been the pandemic, which is just, everyone threw everyone for a loop for 30 to 45 days. No one knew what was going on. So I think we're getting closer. What I will do is I will circulate a master red line of changes from the original draft of the lease that was done back in August to where we wind up. And I'll give that to the executive director. He can circulate it to the members. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly.
Very good. Any other questions on Sailfish Amazon, Matt?
On the closing, so what would the dollar amount be? Do we know?
So the invoice was $385,000. And then in addition to that, there'll be another $35,000 that they'll have to pay to the escrow for Loki Brill. Loki Brill estimates their total fee to be $25,000, but it's a multi-year project. It's a $75 million project. We thought that adding another 10 would make a lot of sense. There may be unforeseen issues,
And then would they would give that back?
and whatever's not spent, they get back. By setting up the escrow, we've done that with Stewart. We started that practice, the agency started that practice last year as part of the local labor policy. And that way the bills come in, they get paid back by the agency. And Loki Brill knows that they're getting paid. Right now, Loki Brill is operating for free because that escrow hasn't been established. So there'll be, once the escrow is established, there'll be a flurry of bills that'll have to get paid for their time in March, April, May, and June.
Who holds the escrow? Us?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in the name of the agency and it's at
Orange Bank and Trust.
Bank and Trust. Right. It's for the benefit of the project, but it's in the agency.
With that $385,000 and,
I think it's 380.
385. 380? I thought it was 385, but. Is it 380?
380, yeah.
380, I'm sorry.
No problem.
So, Guy, you had talked to us
Hello.
about that account that we have with the $250 in it. I'm not really all that familiar with it.
The
My
CRC.
question is, why couldn't it be transferred to that account?
I believe the project needs to originate in the CRC for the monies
Yes.
to be put in the CRC, but Bob can speak to that.
Say that- say that again.
The project needs to originate in the CRC for the monies to be utilized within the CRC.
You have to have a project that the CRC is involved in. So a bond project, this is not a bond project. It's strictly an IDA project, so it has to go into the IDA funds, into the IDA account, the general funds.
Anything else on Sailfish?
But there is the new program, which we can talk about.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm getting at.
Our next item is the May financial report. Matt Stoddard, our treasurer, please.
Monthly statement, May 31st. Checkbook beginning balance from last report, $252,183.10. With checks being written out to acquisition marketing of $1,775. Suzanne Hayden, clerical services, $2,000. And to the law firm, $2,409.50. The checks going out in May total is $6,184.50, bringing the checking account balance to $245,953.60. Orange County Trust Bank, we still have the one CD, which has $54,633.38. Out of that, we have what's the word I'm looking for, Connor? We have ended the two other trust CDs, and we moved that money into a money market of $400,864,039, bringing the grand total of checking and CDs and money market to $701,451.37.
questions for Matt?
Matt, could you just repeat the money market amount?
The money market amount is $400,864.39. And there was, when we closed out the 2 CDs, there was interest in there of $816.85. That also got moved into the money market.
And I believe that money market rate was 11 basis points,
Correct.
not 11%.
Like 0.11.
Yeah. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve the monthly financial statement for May? So moved. By Bob Santo, second to
I'll
that
second.
motion. Thank you, Don, with the second. I'll ask for the vote. Matt?
Oh, yes.
Yes on that. Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Don?
Yes?
And Ed, can you hear us? How do you vote on the monthly financial report?
Yes.
A yes for Ed, and I'm a yes. And John is not with us at this point, so it's 7-4 and 1 no vote. 6-4, correct. Added 1. Other business that needs to come before us tonight. I have one thing to bring up, but I'll ask for anything else. Are you raising your hand? Go ahead.
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you distribute this?
I did. You should find those in your board packets.
What is it?
So it's the Klein Alert on the new bill
Oh.
that establishes a small business state disaster emergency loan program and grant program. It has been delivered to the governor as of last week. It should be signed over the next 2 weeks, I would expect, certainly by the end of the month. There are requirements that you need to review and approve by way of resolution. One of the initial aspect is how much are you going to make available by reason of grants, by reason of loans. The grants are capped at $10,000. They're limited purposes for PPE or PPE services for businesses. We need to discuss, determine, I would think at the finance committee level first, how those grants are going to work. You know, I would hope that you're not just going to give $10,000 to a company and get a report later. You'd have to want to see some bills and invoices and determinations, pay the vendor directly perhaps. But that's up to the committee and the agency to decide. The loan program is up to $25,000. It is really only good for 1 year. It's 1 year plus 60 days. Whenever the disaster is declared over, anyone's guess when that'll be. If it extends into next year, I would presume, there's no assumption, but I presume that the legislature would then extend this, but that would have to be done by legislative action. Right now, it sunsets by December 31st of 2021, and is deemed as if then it never even existed. So, a lot.
Grant up to 10,000, loan 25,000.
Correct.
Where does it say the 10,000 here?
On page 3.
Oh, I see it, okay.
And are there guidelines on the loan for interest rates and how
No
that's paid
interest.
back?
No interest.
Oh, no interest,
No
okay.
interest.
Yep, well, that's easy.
That's easy.
So the grants.
Okay, limited to 50 employees, businesses of no more than 50 employees. Okay, and then you have to make certain economic determinations before you make a loan.
And the loan is good for a year, and then do we decide on our own repayment plans, or it has to be paid back?
Has to be paid back.
There's no forgiveness.
Within what time frame?
So it's within 1 year after the end of the grace period. The grace period is 60 days after the end of the disaster declaration.
That's not a lot, that's not a lot of time.
It's too short.
Jeez.
How are you gonna pay back $10,000 or $25,000?
10,000 is a grant. 10,000 is a grant.
So can we give them a $25,000 loan and then decide 10 of it is a grant, and then they would be responsible to pay back 15?
You can give them a $10,000 grant for the limited purposes,
Mm-hmm.
PPE,
Mhm.
and PPE equivalent cleaning services. And a $15,000 loan, you can give them 10 and 25. So what needs to get done, okay? A, the governor needs to sign the bill. B, there are certain determinations that need to be made in a resolution. And I'll work with the board, the finance committee, and the executive director on getting that up to speed. You then need to make determinations on how much money will be available, what's the total pot, what are you going to do with the loan grant? It's essentially the same discussion that we had back in April, okay? And then determine what type of agreement you're going to have, what type of credit reviews you're going to do. Are you going to do the credit reviews yourself? You're going to engage a company to do the credit reviews? You know, I'm mindful of the fact that you don't get paid for this. So, you know.
We don't?
Right. So who does?
I didn't know that. I was
Who does those credit reviews? You know, and how are you going to get them done? Are you going to utilize someone else? Are you going to utilize a vendor? Are you going to piggyback on the Orange County IDA? If an applicant is getting something from the Orange County IDA, they can't get it from you at the same time. So there's prohibitions in the statute against that. So I think there's an encouragement for local IDAs to work together. So maybe you can pool resources on that. And there's a lot the executive director can reach out and report back. I think you have some time, but because it's a relatively short, one-shot program, you can't, I don't think it would be prudent to be talking about this at the holiday time. You really have to have it up and running.
Ready.
by-
We should have all of those applications.
You should have all the application forms and all of that done by no later than sometime in the middle or end of July.
What, is there anything laid out to specifically, I have no words, sorry. Is there anything laid out for us as to what qualifies as PPE, or is that up to us to decide within reason?
I'm sure there'll be guidance, but the statute right now just says PPE.
My question would be, is there anything we can do to start getting ready?
I
That
think
we
you
do
can-
know.
I think you can do a lot to get ready.
Yeah,
I think you can,
okay.
you can start on an application form, you can start on a loan form, you can start on a grant form, you can start on all of that stuff now. I think it should be done through the finance committee, because it's a finance-related entity. And then you can gauge, you know, how are you gonna call for projects? Are you going to post something? Are you going to post it on the website? You know, what's the mechanism for that? I would think you want to be consistent with other IDAs in the area, like Orange County, like Walden, the other IDAs in the county, and then work cooperatively with that.
So-
There'll probably be guidance issued by ESD, I would assume, and EDC may issue a lot of guidance as well.
So as you know, we already have a committee set up to do that Matt and I and Bob sit on. And I believe we meet tomorrow, don't we?
Because I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to you later about it, but this is good news. You said in great, you know, we could hope that the governor will have this signed in 1 week's time.
So it was delivered to the governor on Friday, okay? He is supposed to sign once it's delivered or veto it within 10 days,
Oh.
okay? The 10-day period is sometimes not 10 days, but it's supposed to be within 10 days. So hopefully by the time we meet again, it's already been signed, and we can maybe have a resolution ready at the end of June to at least discuss to address some of the issues that's required by the statute.
Just as a little highlight, I can share with you guys that I've been in communications with Senator Skoufis, and he's all on board with this, and he supposedly sent the letter to the governor for a quick signature. Now, whether that happens or not, who knows? But
I mean, there's no reason not to sign it. It's not using state money. It's using local IDA revenue money. The IDA, the governor gets, you know, kudos to the legislature and the governor for moving forward on this. And so why would he not sign it?
Good question for you. With this grant or this proposal, if the governor signs it, can this money be moved to the other board and then distributed that way, or does it have to be distributed?
I vote for that.
I knew you were gonna ask that question. It's an IDA program.
So,
It needs to be distributed by the IDA,
okay.
okay? But there's nothing to say, okay, the more I thought about this, there's nothing to say that the Tomstrong can't offer this as an additional support mechanism for whatever Tomstrong is doing. So if Tomstrong has things set up, certainly it can be one-stop shopping, okay? And, you know, I don't mean it in a negative sense, I mean it in an efficiency standpoint from a business standpoint. They apply to Tomstrong, Tomstrong can then recommend it over to the IDA can piggyback on maybe some of the reviews that Tomstrong is set up to be able to do on credit and employee history and financials, and then make the determination, decision, and issue the grant or loan. But I think those need to be worked out with the committee, the executive director, and the other entity.
So
You may decide that you're gonna go along, so, you know, it's up to you.
So the $200,000 that we discussed a couple months ago for this committee that we sit on, we're not gonna be able to do that?
Not through that mechanism, but you could do it through this mechanism. And when we discussed it then, this is what I was thinking and hoping was going to be the case, because this had just got introduced.
Just took a lot longer than you wanted it to.
And why?
So Jeff, do we have to rescind that, what we had already agreed upon, and come up with a new language for
Let's
that?
wait till the law gets passed.
Yeah, I think, so what I'm conveying is that we're going to meet on the 25th. So hopefully by then, this legislation is signed, and then we can work on a resolution that addresses that issue, as well as this legislation.
Can we be sure to have it, if it's signed for argument's sake on Monday, can we have this ready to present and vote on at the next meeting?
If it's signed on Monday, and your next meeting is the 25th, I will guarantee that you'll have a resolution to vote on. But I may need some input from the committee and from the executive director, because there are certain benchmarks that I can't decide. So my goal would be, if it's, let's say it's signed by Monday, which is 10 days, by shortly thereafter,
Monday night.
no, but shortly thereafter, the executive director will have a draft of a resolution that at least he can share and provide for discussion. And obviously, I'm available to participate in any discussions that you guys may want to have. My only caveat with that is, to the extent that there are a committee and two or more members are meeting, you should notice that under the public offices law as a public meeting. Provide the opportunity for the public to at least observe. They may not be able to get here, but they should be able to observe.
Does that apply to who's on talking with Tomstrong or no?
If it's not Tomstrong, no, if it's Tomstrong, it doesn't apply to this body. Okay, but if you're meeting to discuss this body's response to this bill, you do it, and as two of you are together, you do have to have a public meeting notice.
And that's the finance committee?
It could be any committee you want, but I think it shouldn't be the audit committee, it's not the governance committee, I think it's the finance committee. And certainly, if you wanted, if the board wanted to tonight, you could establish a temporary committee outside of the finance committee just for the purposes of this, but you do have a finance committee, so it's up to you guys.
Because the finance committee is not the same as the reps on the Tomstrong committee.
Correct.
Does it make sense to make a special committee that is the same?
That's up to those.
I would like that,
That's a good point.
yeah.
You need a motion for that?
Yes.
You good?
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
And who are the three members? Yourself, Don, and Bob. So we would your motion would be a committee of those 3 board members to work on this?
To create a small, you're really creating a small business state disaster emergency loan and grant committee.
Yes, sir. Exactly. Any discussion on that motion?
So the only thing I can say, I guess when we meet tomorrow, we gotta tell that stuff's off the board for that particular committee, the other committee I'm talking about. We have to make that clear, because they're still
Yeah. that's-
waiting for that, you know.
I don't know if there's any chance there's still an executive order in the offering for that other avenue.
No, this is
This is it? Oh,
Is
okay.
there nothing?
So,
This is as good as you could get.
okay,
And this
It
is
ain't bad, though.
very good. Well, it's actually very good.
yeah.
And
A
the
motion like that?
legislature realized that because the vote in both houses were unanimous,
Unanimous, wow.
which is,
Both sides,
Yeah, that's right.
That's unusual.
which is
If,
like,
Is there-
when was the last time that happened?
I don't think I was born, so.
So we have a motion by Matt, second by Bob, and I'll ask for the vote. Matt?
Yes.
Bob? Randy?
Yes.
Yes.
Don? Ed, can you hear us? We're voting on the proposed committee for this program. We're not getting Ed. I'm a yes. So that would give us 5 yes and 2 no votes.
No.
Motion carried.
2 no votes, nothing,
No.
non-votes,
Yeah, no.
2 abstentions, 2 absent.
Gets confusing, thanks for the guidance there, Bob. I might mention that I received an email a few days ago in my IDA email, Monday, June 8th, that the New York State EDC was gonna be offering workshops and webinars free of charge to all IDAs across the state, specifically on setting up and implementing a loan program related to this bill.
No, when is that?
Um,
They come up with dates yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
But also, in that same email, it is a plan to do virtual training that was originally scheduled in person back in April, I think. And they have dates on that, Matt, of, let me find it here, June 24th and 25th, 10 a.m. to 2:30 online.
It's online? Okay.
And you can get credit as an IDA board member if you attend during the live presentation and you register. So maybe you can make sure we check with everybody, Connor, if you can attend. It's 2 days in a row and would be, I don't know if they take time out for lunch or not, but would be
They're not providing.
yeah, no lunch provided, so that's interesting. And finally, related to training, we had begun a in-house training with Bob back at our March meeting before the current circumstances with the virus came up. But I did speak with Bob about continuing those possibly sometime this summer, maybe at our August meeting.
Sure.
And we can see how these other trainings and processes go in the meantime.
So, and my thought on the August meeting would be really to focus, because we have limited time before the meeting, is to focus in on the committee structures, what each committee is supposed to be doing, and why the committee structure is so important in governance of a corporation, but an agency like this as well. It really comes out of Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley.
Question,
Matt?
if I could. Do we have to do the training right before a meeting and cram it in? Couldn't we schedule a different time for it where we're not cramming it in and we only got this much time?
I'm happy to do that if it works.
It would be,
Sure.
for me, I don't know about the rest of the board, but the last one, I didn't get to ask it.
July is tough for me.
Okay.
Um,
August sometime?
After July, I'm really open. And what I do for other agencies is exactly that. we go to an undisclosed location. I mean, we publish it because everyone's together, but, you know, pick 2 or 3 hours at a time,
Please.
and then.
For me, that would be good.
I'm fine with any
Talk
talk.
about whatever, you know, I can have an agenda, but whatever discussions come up.
We previously had some consensus to at least start out before the meeting, but I think this would be more productive to not have the deadline and the limited time.
So, and if you wanted to do it on a weekend instead, I mean, weekends in the summer are tough for everyone, but if you wanted to do that, I'm fine with that. If you want to do weekends in the fall, you know, I'm fine with that. Whatever you decide.
We'll explore that.
Can we take a consensus via email when you send out the notice for the other trainings that are available?
Definitely, I think I like that idea, absolutely.
Our next scheduled meeting is July 9th, 2020, but we have a couple of possible,
July 9 or
It
14?
says 14.
it changed. Which is it? I have one thing that says July 9th.
14.
It is July 14th. Thank you. I don't know where this one came from. Yeah.
What
I don't know what happened.
And then we may have a special meeting on the 25th.
Of June, and possibly a public hearing on the 22nd of June.
Now, the issue with the public hearing is that it's a public hearing, the board members can attend, that's what you've been your practice, but you're not required to attend. And I think the executive director said that he would run the public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, if we spoke, that you said you might want to come and attend, I would love the board to be here, but it's not necessary, absolutely.
Want to call for the public comment one?
Yes, yeah.
And you would like to run it?
I could, absolutely,
Yeah.
it's really your prerogative, but
Yeah,
yes, sir.
okay, let's talk about that. Sounds good. Anything else that needs to come before us this afternoon? If not, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn. By Bob, second that motion?
Second.
By Matt. All in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Randy? Don?
Aye.
Are you there, Ed? Do you want to quit? Yeah. I'm in favor as well. We have 5 votes to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Billy.